Hi again, everyone. This is Jen, and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, I discuss living and managing and using DBT skills to manage my borderline personality diagnosis. This channel is for any one of you who is living with borderline, wants to know more about the disorder or how to be supportive or understanding. I welcome you to subscribe, like, share, and leave your comments below. They're super helpful. And I love to hear your feedback. Please add anything. It could be anything at all. Today's video, something I want to talk about is the big old question of, should I tell someone about my BPD diagnosis? I'm going to tell you about times that I have told someone and times that I haven't told someone, and what are my thoughts on each of those situations. Overall, to answer this question, should I tell someone about my BPD diagnosis? My answer is no, don't tell them. And here's why. When I first became diagnosed, it was a big jump start for me. I wanted to get better. I remember it was right after September 11th, and I was having a really hard time dealing with all that. There was a lot of firefighters in my life. I was deeply affected, I think, as most of us were, not all of us. And so I kind of had a little breakdown. I went into a psychiatric ward for maybe about a week. And I remember, just kind of talking to some of the workers there, the therapists and nurse, and they said, have you ever heard of borderline personality disorder? And then they slid this orange little pamphlet across the table, which I still have, and said, have you ever heard of borderline personality disorder? I'm like, I sure haven't. And as soon as I read all the criteria, that was me. Self-harm, the drinking, the mood swings, the anger, the feeling of loneliness, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment, all of that, emptiness, And so I wanted people to support me, and I wanted people to know what it was, because maybe that could help them, help me. Maybe that could help them be more understanding or be more patient, right? When you have cancer or something like that, there are definitely, I think it's more acceptable and more expected that if you have a physical diagnosis, let's say breast cancer, it's easier to share that with people. Other people understand that. More people have had it. They know more about it. There's more out there in the public forum. So sure, I guess that makes a little bit more sense. I think people look at mental health disorders as something you did to yourself. It's your fault. It's your problem. Where it's hard to blame somebody for getting breast cancer, I suppose. So there were a number of lovers and boyfriends over the years, and some family members that, I would say, I remember there was a guy I was dating about 6 years ago now, and we had this fight during a walk, and we were talking about going on a cruise, and that I really like scuba diving, and I would want to go scuba diving, and he said, oh, well, there probably won't be time for that. These port calls are super quick. And I was like, I'm going to go scuba diving. I took his declaration of, well, there won't be time for that, is an attempt to control me or not allow me to do the scuba diving, which there could have been a twinge of that. Well, he was very much taken aback by my reaction. And, I think it's common with people with BPD who have been invalidated their entire lives, who have been, told, well, that abuse didn't happen. I'm sorry you felt that way. I never tried to kill your mother. I was never an alcoholic. I was always there for you. I think you misremembered that incorrectly. For me, being invalidated so much in my life, led me to go in the opposite direction and push back and be like, no, this is my reality. This is what I want. I do have a right to declare what it is that I want. So, I told him, I said, okay, well, I have this diagnosis. I was in a DBT class at the time. We sat down by the river. We had this really great open conversation about what borderline was, and I pulled up some information on my cell phone, and eventually I gave him a book by Sherry Manning called Loving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the book, which was a text that the DBT group, and for those of you, I'm sorry, who don't know what DBT is, dialectical behavior therapy. It's the most effective way studies have shown in treating borderline personality disorder. So I shared him this book, and he was like, oh, he's really positive. It was really great. And I think, and he accompanied me to a therapist session so that he could learn a little bit more about this firsthand. And then I think he thought by me sharing this and this being out here, suddenly my symptoms were going to disappear. It was going to be easier to live with me. And he got maybe about, I don't know, 20 pages into the book, kind of gave up. And at one point he said to me, I don't need to read that book. I live with BPD every day with you. Which was super hurtful, right? It's super unhelpful, not hurtful. You're clearly not invested in learning about this. And I had to kind of ask myself, you know, I told him, you know, I was like, for me, like, being validated is a huge part. I think, you know, most people probably are validating to others without really trying, but there are certainly people who are invalidating without trying, right? You know, and he'd validate me. I think I could see his efforts, but then, you know, after a week or two, I think the novelty wore off for him, and he really learned that, hey, this is a really serious disorder, and it's hard, and it's a lifetime management system, and it can be difficult, but, you know, BPDs are super warm and caring, loving, and capable of so much. They're intelligent, right? They're dynamic. They're humans. They're not BPD. They're humans with a disorder. And slowly, there seemed to be some built up resentment from him. And then I really regretted sharing that diagnosis, because what I thought was going to turn into support, I don't know that it turned into judgment, but it certainly went in the opposite direction of support. And then I felt that anything that I did would always now, to him, be looked through this lens of, well, you have BPD, right? So maybe if I was having PMS, oh, it's your BPD. Or, right, like, if I was sad, oh, you're emotionally dysregulated, it's your BPD, right? Or if we had an argument, oh, BPDs are so argumentative. It's like, well, why did I even bother sharing this with you, right? The next, I don't know how I would say relationship, but I did share my diagnosis with another male friend who was very interested, and he was supportive. And he did read the books, and, you know, over the years, we've since lost touch, but over the years, he could say, hey, you know, you're handling this a lot better than you know, used to. You're a lot calmer with this. But, you know, then I shared it with a boyfriend after that. And again, you know, I would be like, you know, we'd have a fight or something. And I'm like, well, there's something that I really need to tell you. I think it would really be helpful for you to understand. And then I told him, and, you know, they were kind of aloof. Like, I think he had his own mental issues going on, but he didn't seem very interested. He certainly didn't seem very supportive. He didn't really seek to understand more. And so I had to start asking myself, like, why am I telling people about this diagnosis? For one thing, you're not obligated to tell anybody. I mean, if you have diabetes, you're not obligated to tell anyone. If you have cancer, you're not obligated to tell anyone. You know, I think if you have a communicable disease like HIV or coronavirus or something like that, yes, it's your duty to tell people that you have that. However, what is the point? You know, at some point I got to this stage where I'm like, why am I divulging this diagnosis to other people? When, one, I feel judged afterwards. Two, I normally don't feel supported. And three, hey, they don't tell me what their diagnosis is, right? Like, just because somebody hasn't been diagnosed doesn't mean that they don't have some kind of mental health issue, right? So over time, and it's a personal issue, right? Like, it's not everyone's business. You know, people are going eventually to know what your quirks are. If you're quick to anger, if you cry a lot, you know, if there are certain things that are triggering for you, people are going to catch on to that fairly quickly. So in some respects, there's not even, in my opinion, a real reason to tell people that you have this diagnosis. You can do other things, right? Like you can say, you know, I just need someone to like validate me. Or you can say things like, I just need to be held right now. Or you can say things like, you know, I'm not really feeling myself. I think I just need to like kind of take some time out, which is, you know, code for come down to my emotional baseline. Giving them feedback like that, I think, is far more useful, far easier to understand, and far more easy to act upon than saying something to the effect of, well, I have borderline personality disorder. Here's 15,000 websites and books and documents for you to go look at, a lot of which are ignorant or, you know, misinformed. So yes, I had and I mean, definitely share your diagnosis with your health provider. I mean, they can't help you otherwise. But insofar as sharing it with people, as I mentioned, there was one person who seemed to be understanding. But I think a lot of times, especially if you are not, I mean, you know, a good question as well, was I entrusting this information with trustworthy people? Were these good people? I think some of them really were. And I think some of them, most of them were not. So if you are going into like DBT or like a really intense form of therapy, sure, maybe you're going to need a person to understand what it is you're going through. I found that meeting other people with BPD, which you can easily do in finding them in DBT, is making friends with them, right? Like, you know, then they understand what it's like not to get a text back right away, right? Like, they understand what catastrophizing is. That I found far more helpful to me than telling someone who didn't have the disorder, didn't have a background of which understand it. So, and furthermore, when I told somebody that didn't have it, I felt super judged, which you're not going to find in a classroom of 8 to 10 other people with BPD who are in a DBT class, right? Like, they're not likely to judge you since they're there for the exact same reason. So, in summation, I say, definitely share your diagnosis with your health provider. Definitely share it with other people in your DBT group. And be very careful who you share it with outside of that, for fear that you could be judged or it could be used against you, or everything might be chalked up to your diagnosis. So those are my thoughts. Tell me what yours are in the comments below. Thanks. Again, I'm Jen. This has been BPD Woman, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.